The home page features a list of posts submitted. However, I want to expand on this. I also want to display recipe posts as well. There are two solutions to accomplish this. The first solution would be to create our own query ignoring the main query. However, that's a lot of work to do, and we don't want to completely ignore the main query, as other plugins may want to modify how it works. Luckily, we can modify the main query to suit our needs. This is the best solution, and it's easy. Inside the functions file, add an action hook called pre-get-posts. The function I want to call will be named JUModifyHomepageQuery. Inside the includes folder, create a file named home-query.php and define the function inside this file. Lastly, include this file. This hook will be called when the main query is created, but it will not be executed at this point. Since it's not being executed, we have the opportunity to modify it as we please. This function will be passed in an object called query. Whenever we worked with the WP Query class, we always created a new instance. However, at this point, we already have an instance. To modify a query after it's created, we have to use a method called set, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Something that you need to keep in mind is that this hook will always give you the main query for every page, not just the home page. Since this is the case, we have to use a conditional statement to check for two things. We have to check if this query is for the home page using the isHome method. Then we need to use the isMainQuery method to check if this is the main query. If both return true, then we'll modify query. I'm now going to call the set method and set the post type parameter to an array that contains the name of the post types I'd like to retrieve. I want to get the post and recipe post types. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the WP Query class again. You'll find more information about these methods and properties that I'm using. Alright, now that we've modified the main query, let's check out the home page. If you refresh the page, you should have both recipes and posts appearing. That's all there is to it. Before I end this lecture, I want to talk about a function called queryPosts, which you can find in the resource section of this lecture. There is a function that you can use to modify the main query, but I highly recommend you don't use it. If you take a look, you'll find this note from WordPress that says, "Note, this function will completely override the main query and isn't intended for use by plugins or themes. Its overly simplistic approach to modifying the main query can be problematic and should be avoided wherever possible. In most cases, there are better, more performant options for modifying the main query, such as via the pre-get-posts action within WP Query. This must not be used within the WordPress loop. Try your best not to use this function. There are a lot of themes and plugins out there that use this, but it's just bad practice to do so."